It happened on a Tuesday evening, the kind of day one never forgets because it carves a scar into life. He came home from work, exhausted but eager, because the one thing that always lifted him after long hours was the sound of paws scrambling against the floor, nails clicking with excitement as his dog, Max, bounded toward him. Max was more than a pet. He was his companion, his shadow, his family. But that day, when he unlocked the door and stepped inside, the silence was crushing. No pause, no tail wagging, just emptiness. At first, he thought maybe Max was sleeping in his favorite spot under the couch. He called his name, his voice too loud in the hollow air. Nothing. He checked the bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen, every corner. His heart pounded faster with every empty glance. The back door was shut, the windows locked. And then he noticed something strange. The front door, the one he always triple-checked, had fresh scratches near the lock, as if someone had forced it open. That was the moment the truth hit him like a punch to the chest. Someone had taken Max. He fell to his knees, calling the dog's name again, even though he knew Max wasn't there. The house felt wrong without him. It felt robbed, violated, gutted of its heartbeat. He pressed his palms against the floor where Max usually lay and swore through his tears he would get him back. The first thing he did was ask around the neighborhood. He knocked on doors, showed pictures, begged for anyone to have seen something. Most shrugged apologetically, offering sympathy, but nothing else. But then there were his neighbors 2 houses down, a couple he had never quite trusted. They smiled too wide, their words too quick. "Oh, that's so awful," the wife said, her eyes darting away. "We hope you find him soon." The husband added, "Dogs wander off sometimes. Maybe he just ran away." But Max never ran away. He was loyal to the bone. He waited at the door when his owner left and jumped the second he came home. Those words, that fake concern, twisted his gut. They knew something. He could feel it in the way their eyes didn't quite meet his, in the way they stepped closer together like a secret stood between them. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his chest tight with grief and fury. Images of Max filled his mind. The way the dog tilted his head when he was curious, the way he nudged his hand when he was sad. He thought about Max alone somewhere, scared, wondering why no one had come for him. The thought shredded him. But grief wasn't the only thing growing in him. A darker feeling took root, steady and sharp. Because if those neighbors had taken Max, if they thought they could rob him of the only family he had, then he would rob them of something far greater. Not their possessions, not their money, something worse, their peace of mind. He would make them question every sound in the night, every shadow in their yard. He would let paranoia eat them alive until they confessed, until they cracked, until their lives felt as hollow as his did without Max. That was the silent promise he made in the darkness of his bedroom. They had taken his dog, and he was going to take their sanity. The next morning, he walked past their house deliberately, Max's leash dangling loosely from his hand. He wanted them to see him, to feel the weight of his grief, to know he wasn't letting this go. The wife peeked through the curtains, quickly vanishing when she realized he had noticed. That was confirmation enough for him. They knew something, and sooner or later, he would prove it. But proving it wasn't enough. He didn't just want justice. He wanted them to feel what he felt. The hollow ache of loss, the gnawing fear that something precious had been ripped away. So he began carefully, quietly, with small things, the kind of details that wouldn't raise suspicion but would settle in their minds like seeds of unease. One night, he crept into their yard. Their porch light had burned out days earlier, and he knew they hadn't replaced it. In the cover of darkness, he placed one of Max's toys, a chewed-up tennis ball, right on their porch. The next morning, he watched from his window as the husband bent to pick it up, his face tightening for just a moment before he tossed it into the trash. The following week, he did it again. This time, he left Max's collar, the spare one he kept in a drawer, hanging from their fence. By then, they must have realized it wasn't a coincidence. They whispered more on their porch, glancing around nervously when they thought no one was watching. He didn't stop there. He printed flyers with Max's photo, bold letters spelling "stolen," reward for safe return. He plastered them on telephone poles, on community boards, even on the street corner right outside their home. Every time they stepped out, they had to look at Max's face, had to feel the suspicion of neighbors passing by, reading the words "stolen" and wondering. Then he started with the sounds. Late at night, he'd slip into their backyard, and leave a portable speaker hidden near the fence. At 2 in the morning, it would click on, playing the faint sound of a dog whining. Not loud enough to wake the whole block, just enough for them to hear it inside their house. Just enough to make them sit up in bed and wonder if the guilt was clawing at them. And it worked. He saw it in their faces when he passed them on the street. The wife's smile had grown brittle, her eyes darting constantly, as if expecting something to leap out at her. The husband was jumpy, snapping at small noises, his hands clenched into fists even during casual conversations. Their wide, fake smiles had vanished, replaced by shadows under their eyes. Meanwhile, he remained calm, polite, the picture of a grieving dog owner still searching for answers. To everyone else, he was simply heartbroken. To them, he was a ghost haunting their every step. But it wasn't enough yet. He wanted them unraveling, doubting not just their safety but their sanity. He wanted them to feel the paranoia growing sharper every day, until it tore them apart from the inside out. So he planned something bigger, something that would leave no doubt in their minds that their crime had consequences. Because they hadn't just taken Max. They had taken his peace. And now, he was going to take theirs. The first 2 weeks of subtle games softened them, wore down their nerves. But he knew fear grows best when it escalates, when it feels like it is closing in from all sides. So he made his next move sharper, bolder. One evening, he slipped a note into their mailbox. No handwriting, just printed words in bold black ink. I know what you did. Nothing more. No name, no threat. Just 5 words that could mean anything, or everything. He imagined them reading it, their throats tightening, their minds racing. He knew the paranoia would gnaw at them all night. A few days later, he timed his next strike. Around midnight, he walked by their house and tossed a small bag of dog food onto their porch. It landed with a thud that echoed in the quiet street. He didn't linger. He just kept walking, his hood pulled low, his steps steady. By morning, the bag was gone. But he noticed the way their blinds stayed shut longer than usual, the way their porch lights now flickered on at dusk and stayed burning until dawn. They were beginning to live in fear, exactly as he wanted. But fear is greedy. Once it takes root, it grows hungry, and he intended to feed it. He began calling their landline from an anonymous number. Sometimes he said nothing, letting silence stretch until they hung up. Sometimes he played faint sounds, a dog's bark, a collar jingling, claws scratching wood. Just fragments, enough to make them wonder if Max's spirit was haunting them or if their secret had finally been uncovered. He could see the toll it was taking. The husband's swagger disappeared, his shoulders hunched like he was bracing for a blow. The wife lost weight, her eyes sunken from sleepless nights. Their once manicured lawn grew ragged, the flowers in their garden wilting, forgotten. Even the neighbors began whispering about how strange they had become. And then came the moment he knew they were breaking. One night, he returned from work late and saw them arguing on their porch. Their voices were low but urgent, words tumbling out fast. The wife was shaking her head violently, her hands trembling. The husband was pacing, gripping his hair, muttering curses. Finally, he shouted, "We shouldn't have done it." The words sliced through the quiet street before he realized how loud he'd been. He froze in the shadows, his breath caught in his chest. It was the confirmation he had waited for. His instincts had been right all along. They had taken Max. And now, their own guilt was eating them alive. But instead of relief, he felt a darker satisfaction curl through him. He had proof, yes. But more than that, he had power. They were unraveling not because of the police, not because of evidence, but because he had turned their crime into a ghost that stalked them at every turn. Still, he wanted more. He wanted a collapse so complete it left them with nothing. No comfort, no trust, no sleep. Just the echo of their own crime consuming them. So he prepared for the final act. The night he would push them over the edge and leave them no choice but to face what they had done. Because they had taken Max from him. And he would not stop until they were forced to feel what it meant to lose everything. The night of his final move came when the air itself seemed heavy, thick with the kind of silence that makes one hold their breath. He had been patient, meticulous, but now it was time to push them over the edge. At 2 a.m., he crept into their yard one last time. This time he didn't just bring a toy or a note. He brought a recording, Max's bark, clear and sharp, the sound that used to greet him every day. He hid the speaker just under their bedroom window and let it play on a loop. Short bursts, followed by whining, then silence. He slipped away into the shadows, his heart pounding, and waited from across the street. 10 minutes later, the lights in their bedroom snapped on. He saw the curtains rustle, then slam shut. A shadow paced back and forth, frantic, desperate. The barking kept playing, steady and unrelenting. After 20 minutes, the husband stormed out onto the porch, wild-eyed, searching the street. His voice cracked as he shouted into the night, "Enough! Enough already!" The wife appeared behind him, crying, tugging at his arm. Their perfect facade was gone. They weren't smiling, weren't pretending. They were broken. The next morning, word spread quickly. They had called the police, claimed they were being harassed, that someone was tormenting them. But here's the irony. When the officers showed up, neighbors came forward. They mentioned seeing the couple acting strange, whispering about how guilty they seemed ever since Max disappeared. The police listened carefully, jotting notes, suspicion turning toward the very people who had taken what wasn't theirs. That same evening, he got the call he had been waiting for. Max had been found. The police said the neighbors claimed he wandered into their yard. But when he saw him, his eyes wide but his tail wagging furiously, he knew the truth. They had broken under the pressure. His games, his haunting, had forced them to give Max back without him ever needing to touch them directly. He held Max close, burying his face in the dog's fur, whispering promises that they would never be apart again. The neighbors avoided him after that, their yard overgrown, their smiles vanished, their peace destroyed. People whispered about them for months. Their reputation, their comfort, their sanity, all gone. And every night when he looked at Max curled up safely at his side, he knew justice had been served. They had taken his dog, so he took their peace of mind. And he would do it again without hesitation. So the question remains, if someone stole the one thing a person loved most, would they let the law handle it quietly, or would they craft a justice so sharp it cut into their very sleep?